Goodness, what an amazing night to be here at Genesis Metro for Fuse. We have already eclipsed a great number of guests coming in since the new year, and so if I have not had a chance to personally meet you, my name is Pastor Korey, and I am so glad that you are here. We do this every Wednesday, and I think it's just the best thing of the week. What about you guys? Yeah. So we would love to have you back as often as you can be here. We hope that that worship was inspiring. We hope that this message is challenging and encouraging. And we hope you find your family in the small groups after this. So tonight, we're going to continue in the Fuse version of the Beyond the Wall series where a breakthrough is coming. And last week, Pastor Titus, he spoke about a full-time faith. And I can't help but imagine that after hearing that, every single one of you in here were like, yes, that is exactly what I want, a full-time faith. You should. You should strive towards that. You should aim towards that. But as the bumper suggests, it's this journey that you're going to end up taking. And so as I was thinking about tonight and what to talk about, I thought about my own life. This journey that I've been on for the past 22 years. Goodness, that's a lot of years. And what have been some of the other walls that I've come to? Because this faith journey has not been, a straight line. There's been ups and there's been downs. And the one thing that I think that I've kind of had to deal with the most, the one thing that I want to speak to you tonight about is doubt. But to set it up, I think we need a great physical illustration, don't you guys? This will make it fun. So I need a single volunteer, somebody who absolutely trusts Pastor Korey. Yeah. Next to you, Blake. Come up here, man. Come up here. Come up here. Come on up here. Yeah. All right, young man. What's your name?
Adrian.
Adrian. Pastor Korey. Nice to meet you. Now, you trust me? Oh, we're going to test it today. Adrian, do you have a fear of being blindfolded?
No.
Do you like it, though?
Sure.
Oh. All right. Go ahead and toss this on for me, all right? See if it'll fit. I might have to cinch it up. Yeah. I'm going to tighten this up real quick, okay? Hold on. Technical difficulty. Hey, can you see? Can you see? Nope, he cannot see. We are there. All right. Now, Adrian, I'm gonna lead you along, all right? You're gonna follow me, man. Okay. Do you trust me to lead you?
Yes.
All right. Adrian, do you have a fear of the dark?
No.
Nope, no fear of the dark. Adrian, have you ever had a dream where you're like falling? No dream where you're falling and you just wake up all of a sudden? Have you ever done a trust fall, Adrian? Yes. You have? Yeah. Do you want to do an epic trust fall at Fuse? Sure? All right. I'm going to lead you somewhere. Now, I'm not going to be the one that's catching you. Yeah, I know. Wait. He said, wait, what? So, okay. Now, do you trust that I have something in place for you?
Yes, I trust.
God, I like this, man. This guy trusts. All right, buddy. I'm going to position you over here. Turn towards me. I'm going to let you know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to take a trust fall off the edge of the stage.
Okay.
You're down with that?
Yeah.
No hesitation?
Yeah, no hesitation.
Any questions?
No.
No questions, no hesitation. Okay, here we go. I'm going to come back.
Is this the edge?
This is the... You are on... Yes. Is this the edge? Yes, sir. You are on the edge. I'm going to square you up, okay? You know I got you, right, Adrian?
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I need you to do. I want you to cross your arms across your chest.
Okay.
Do not flail them out, okay? Don't flail them out. Just fall straight back. And you're going to be safe, okay? I'm ready. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, on the count of 3, 2, 1, fall. Hey! Yeah. All right, help him up. Whoa. All right, give it up for Adrian one more time. You can keep that blindfold. Just keep it with you. You can take it off. You can take it off, even you all say. And our stud seniors, is that his? Adrian, you might need this, buddy. Yeah. Woo! How many of you would have been as gung-ho about that as Adrian? A few? How many of you would have had some hesitation? How many of you would have had to ask me a ton of questions before it came out? Yes. You see, just like Adrian had to come to this precipice, this point in his life where he had to make a decision, where he had to consider everything around him. We're going to look at a story tonight of one of the apostles, one of the disciples, the guys that followed Jesus, who came to a moment where he had to make a decision. But in this moment, he didn't have everything that he needed, and he exhibited doubt. And tonight, students, if doubt is something that you have wrestled with, I believe kind of naturally when we wrestle with doubt, it makes us actually question our faith. And so tonight, we want to take a deep dive into this story so that tonight you can go away encouraged to know that doubt isn't something that is ultimately going to disqualify you, but it's something that can actually, when we give it to God, it can deepen our faith. Are you guys ready for this? All right. So we are going to be looking at a story that takes place in the book of John in chapter 20. And we're going to look at the first two verses first. So in chapter 24, it says this: Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, or the twin, one of the 12, was not with the disciples. That's an important part. He wasn't with them. Why? Well, because that's when Jesus came back, and he wasn't there when Jesus came back. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." And the way this is written, it's not like, hey, we saw him. No, they kept saying, Thomas, we saw him. Thomas, we saw Jesus. Thomas, you don't understand. Jesus is here. He's back. Thomas. But then Thomas's response is this. It says, but Thomas said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. And so I want to start setting this up by looking at something that Thomas, I think, reveals in all of us. And that is this is that we are prone to prove it. We live in a society that says seeing is believing. And so everywhere we go, when something new is posed to us, we have to see it to believe it. We want somebody to prove it. For example, this tends to happen. It's a phenomenon. But do you have that one friend in your group who tends to make these outlandish claims that they can do something? They'll say something like, hey, I bet I can chug that whole bottle of Cholula. You know what I'm talking about. I see that hand. They're a little ludicrous, a little crazy, maybe a little off the hinges some, but you also feel, as the other friend in that group, like you have an obligation to call them on it. And what do you say? You think you can chug that bottle of Cholula? Prove it. See, I had a friend in college that was like this, and we were walking back from class one day, and the dorm room at SFA, Axum Jacks, it was an old hotel, and it was 3 stories. And we're walking up to it, and he was like, now listen, this guy just watched like a whole episode of Bear Grylls, which is like a survivalist show. It's like military type. He was like, hey, I bet I could jump off the 2nd floor and tuck and roll, and I won't hurt myself. I was like, you are an idiot. Prove it. And so we go up the stairs, and it's looking nice, right? In East Texas, it's pine trees, so there's like a bed of pine needles 3 inches deep. Cushion the blow, just cushion the blow. Without hesitation, jumped off, tucked and rolled. I was like, well, I'll be darned. He did it. And you would think people like this would be satisfied with doing it once. No, he turns around. Guys, I'm pretty sure I can do the 3rd floor. What? 30 feet? Michael, that is the stupidest thing you could ever do. All right, guys, count me down. You get that crack in your voice. You know, there's a little bit of fear there. He went up, he jumped. That one didn't go so well. That knee came up and popped him in the chin, put a little hole through that. Does anybody else not have this friend? Okay, you are those friends. I see. All right. If you want some entertainment, if you want a good time, go to that. But you see, we live in this society that almost trains us to search and to seek the proof that we need, the evidence in things. Think about every year when you begin school. And maybe you've heard rumors about how these teachers are, but it's not until you get into those classrooms, you meet them, that you start to answer your questions. Is this teacher gonna like me? Is this teacher a good teacher? Like, I have actually got to learn geometry this year. Can they teach me geometry? I've got to learn how to read this year. Man, darn. Hopefully they're good, but it's not until you get in there that you find out, is this coach good? Does he even know anything? Dude, I went to a really small school. Really small. We had 2 baseball coaches. One of the baseball coaches had a health reason. He stepped out. They were looking for somebody to step in. Our geometry teacher is like, I can coach baseball. This man looked like he should be doing somebody's taxes or putting together Star Wars Legos, all right? He did not look like a baseball player, and that's okay. Baseball players come in all shapes and sizes. And so we got out there, though, and he grabbed the Funko bat, right? Like, this is your practice bat. He's going to hit us some ground balls. Threw 5 balls up in the air and whiffed on every single one. Did he prove it? No. He proved that he should have stuck to teaching geometry. But we're trained to look for these things. Think about your friendships, right? If somebody says they're really your friend, what are you looking for them to do? Prove it. Now, some of you use that in a manipulative way. That's too far. But sometimes you just need that person to say, hey, it's 1:30. You want to go cow tipping? You say, yes, let's go. Sorry, I've never been cow tipping in my life. But now think about it within the context of how much access we have to information, the internet, social media. We are being bombarded with messages all day, and we are having to figure out how to use a filter to find out if things are true or false. They introduce concepts like fake news to you guys. We've got, you live in a world that's fully filtered. You have people who give the highlight reels or these edited lives. And so what you're trying to figure out is, let's say you meet somebody like this on the streets. Is this person how they are in real life, how they put themselves out there? Because you can look good talking about the Bible on Instagram, but if I see you down at the mall acting like a hooligan, it's not going to be like you're living like it. And I'm going to be able to tell. I'm going to be able to prove real quick with the evidence before me what I need to know to evaluate that situation. So we live in a society where this is the way we're trained, but then you take something like faith and you mix it into this, and you've got a completely different ballgame. We think seeing is believing, and then faith, on the other hand, says believe without seeing. And you have to make the two come together somehow. And what I've noticed over my 20 years is that a lot of times in faith, there are going to be some doubts. You want me to give you 3? Sorry, I didn't put these in the notes, but this is just going to be what you need. We're going to start at a very high level. There is going to be a philosophical questions that rise in your life. These are the big questions that every person that exists with a conscience is sometime going to come and confront these questions. And they're going to be questions like, why are we here? But they could also be questions from like a 6-year-old, like, where did God come from? But they're questions that we might not have the answers to. And when we don't have the answers, we can sit in that uncertainty of doubt. Another example of where these doubts might come from, they'll come from these kind of philosophical questions, but they'll come from these situations that cause fear. They'll come from these societal things that don't seem fair. Because you can just turn on a TV, turn on a news feed, scroll anything, and you'll see that sometimes bad things happen to good people. And if somebody asks you to explain why that happens, you might be at a loss for words. Sometimes what feels even worse is that good things happen to bad people. Or you may see that there are innocent people that are dying in natural disasters and wars. And how do you come to grips with that? These can cause doubt as well, but I think the one that is going to hit you the hardest are the hurts that you can't resolve, the personal issues that you will encounter as you go through this journey of your faith. Why did God let this happen? Why was the divorce finalized? Why is he not answering my prayer? I've asked for this for so long and so long. When you're unable to get to that answer, it can leave you in doubt. And you see, when we get to that spot, there's kind of a twofold thing that we have to be aware of. One, I think it's our natural inclination that when we start to question things and feel like we're unsure, it causes us to distance ourselves from it. We're like, well, I have doubts, so do I really believe? But then I think for others of us, and this is so unfortunate and it makes me sad, but it hits all too close for home. Some of you have grown up in other churches where when you come to them with questions about God, about faith, they shut it down. It's almost as though questioning is bad or wrong. Or you meet adults and say, oh, you have doubts? Well, doubt is the opposite of faith. They can't coexist. So if you have doubts, then you don't have faith. And that breaks my heart, because tonight, as we dig deeper into Thomas's lives, I want you to see that's not true. Does Thomas in this story sit with doubt? Yes. Unless I see it with my own eyes, that's a weird request. He said, I want to put my finger in that nail scar on Jesus' hand. I've got to touch it. I've got to feel it for me to know it to be true. A man clearly wrestling with doubts. But if we take a look at Thomas's life, I think he gets a bad rap. Because if you've grown up in the church at all, he's known as what? Doubting Thomas. And I think that's often, it comes with a bad connotation. But let me look a little bit at Thomas's life. Let me try to dignify the doubt that he's sitting in right here. Because the other boys are there, he's like, Thomas, we've seen him. Thomas, dude, Jesus is back. That's easy for you to say. Why? You saw him. I didn't see him. All I'm telling you is I've got to see him to believe him. But you see, Thomas is not just a doubter. When we go back to John 11, there's a story where Jesus is with his disciples, and they get news that one of their best friends, Lazarus, he's died. And so Jesus then says to the disciples, hey, he's been dead for 4 days. He's stinking. We're going to go to him now. But he was in the place that Jesus would ultimately be arrested, taken to trial, and then crucified. And so Thomas is ready. When Jesus said, let's go, we're going to see Lazarus, you know what Thomas says? Let's go with Jesus and die with him. Does that seem like a person who has a doubt that would disqualify his faith? No, that's a courageous faith. He's the only one of the disciples recorded saying that. I want that to be me. I want to be the type of disciple. I want to be the type of Christian that says, I'll do it, whatever the cost. And here is Thomas displaying that. A couple of chapters later, we see this unfold a little more in John 14. Jesus is teaching the disciples in a parable. He says, hey, I'm going away to prepare a place. I'm going to make a mansion for you. It's going to be sweet. There's going to be a pool in the back, Eli. You ready for that? Yeah, baby, it's going to be nice. Streets of gold. Jesus says, you will know where I'm going. Thomas says, Jesus, I don't know where you're going. Can you please tell us? Because I want to go there. Interrupts the teaching. And the reason we focus in on Thomas for this, because I think Thomas is like a lot of us. I think Thomas is a realist. I think Thomas has been through some things. He's seen some things. He has had disappointment in his life, like so many of us. He has had heartache in his life. And he sits in this moment where all of his friends are saying, hey, Jesus is back. And he's got very real, very sincere questions. And students, tonight, if you have questions that you've been asking about your faith, if for any reason you feel, or if anybody told you they're wrong, hear me out. They are not wrong. If you have questions, it is not bad. If you have questions, it only means that you are human. Thomas had questions. And if those questions are leading you down a road of doubt that seems dark and despairing, let me just hammer this point right now. I want you all to take this down in these notes. You might not need it tonight, but I think somewhere down the road you might need it. And that's this truth. Your doubts don't disqualify your faith. Your doubts do not disqualify your faith. In fact, you could add this onto the end. When you take them to God, they can deepen that faith. They can make that faith richer. And here's why. Like the bumper said, faith is not a destination. There's no finish line on this side of earth. There's no degree that you get at the end, no trophy, no medal. Faith is the journey. Faith is what it takes to get there. So if you have doubts along the way, don't let it discourage you. It does not disqualify your faith. And we will see that affirmed as the story unfolds. In verse 26, it says this. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Oh, you see the change there? Wasn't there the first time. Now he's there. Preach itself. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, he's going straight for him. Somehow Jesus appears in a room that's locked, y'all. This I cannot explain to you. But when he gets in the room, who's he going straight for? Thomas, the doubter. And what is it? You remember what Thomas needed? Look what he got. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. Pay attention to that punctuation. It's exclaimed. What we want to do now is unpack this. How do we get to this point where we go from one verse, Thomas is doubting God, to he has an encounter where he's shouting, my Lord and my God. I think what we have to do first is we have to look how doubts can go into two directions. Doubts in two directions. Like everything that we can take with our faith, we are going to have God who is for us and is pulling us towards him. But we are also up against an enemy who is trying to take that same thing and turn it for evil. So the first direction the doubt can go is that dark side. And that's because of this. The devil uses doubt to drive us away from God, away from purpose, away from our beliefs. How did he do it? Look at this. I mean, it's a simple twofold thing for Thomas. The first two verses, was Thomas there? No. But then the second two, he was. That made all the difference in Thomas's faith. So the first way that the devil will drive you away is he will cause you to fester in isolation. That's a fun word, fester. It's like when you get a wound and it gets an infection and you don't treat it, what does it do? It just festers. It continues to rot and eat away. Students, when you stay away from the place that you are supposed to be, which is in Christian community, those questions, those doubts, the ones that you sit with by yourself, they will cause you to fester and create narratives in your mind that should not exist. That is why the community is so important, because you need voices of truth to help correct those misplaced thoughts, those misplaced narratives in your mind. When Thomas missed the meeting, his doubt was magnified. That's how important it is. When you miss Fuse, things start going a little wonky, don't they? When you miss Sunday morning, keeps you away, just doesn't quite feel right. Because the enemy is trying to use that time when you isolate yourself. Why? Because you were made for community. You were made to be around other people. But then he will make it fester in isolation, but then he will take every chance he gets to start feeding you lies. This is what it calls him. He is the father of lies. So when you encounter a question that you don't have an answer to, you'll hear his voice start to sneak in. You don't really believe that. You don't have a perfect faith. You don't fit in there. That church doesn't like you. Those leaders don't love you. That God isn't even real. He doesn't want you. He's not near you. He won't forgive you. Why would he? After what you said, after what you did, after those things you thought, after the way you behaved, he doesn't love you. And he will take and he will drive you as far away from God until you feel that that doubt is just a dead-end wall. You feel like that doubt is overcoming you and all you're doing is drowning in it. But thanks be to God that all it takes is a single reach, a single ask. He will show up in the same way that he showed up for Thomas, for you and for me, because the other direction the doubt goes is with him. You see, the devil will try to take the doubt and drive us away from it, but God, he will meet us inside of our doubt, and he will use it to draw us near to him. He will meet us inside of that doubt, and he will use it to draw us near. You want to know if you feel like you're a doubter, a questioner, how God deals with the doubter? Look what he did in this story. He met Thomas exactly where he needed. He did for Thomas exactly what he needed. Thomas said, I won't believe unless I see and I touch. And Jesus shows up. He wasn't even in the room at the time, but he knew. He knew exactly what Thomas needed. He knows exactly what you need too, students, if you would just reach for him. And the most important lesson that we learn from this is that our Jesus is not a standoff Savior that's afar and away from us. No, he wants to be as intimate and close to us as we can possibly be. He is not distant away from us based on our doubts. He overcame death, like we saying. What is your doubt going to do to him? Nothing. Woo! So if he feels far away, just reach out. If you have doubts, bring them to him. If you have questions, ask. He is not afraid. All it takes is faith. It doesn't take a perfect faith. It just takes a little bit. Why? Because faith is not the destination. It's the journey. So let me pull up for you a psalm that should be familiar for everybody. Psalm 23 in verse 4, it says this. And this is to exemplify the journey of faith. It says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Our faith journey is going to have peaks and valleys. Now, the devil wants you to be convinced that when you get to a valley, you stay there. But what does this verse tell us to do? To go through it. And maybe some of you aren't there. Maybe you aren't in the valley of death, but maybe you're in the valley of doubt. Keep walking. Keep coming to Jesus. Keep going through. Don't let your doubt turn into a dead end. Keep asking questions. Keep trying to trust in God. And you, like Thomas, can go from one who was doubting 1 minute to shouting the next. Students, in a second, the band is going to come out here. We're going to get our worship on again. If questioning your faith, if having doubts about God and the church and what this whole Christian life means has been something that you've wrestled with, maybe if you would admit it has kind of kept you at arm's length from getting into it, can I encourage you tonight to just make the reach in the same way that Thomas did? Because I know 22 years ago, when I was 18, I stood in a room like this and I used the church to make people think that I was a good person, but I would walk out those doors and I would do the same thing everybody that wasn't a Christian would do. Go to the parties, partake of the things, say the things. But then I would walk in here and act like a completely different person. And one night, somebody presented the gospel that there was a God who loved me so much that he would choose the cross and die for me. And in that moment, I felt my sin and my brokenness. And I cried out to God, if you're real, show up. When I closed my eyes, I saw this story right here of Thomas who doubted what he had heard. Then 1 week later, God, who had gone through death for you and for me, showed up for him and reached out his nail-scarred hands. And as I closed my eyes and envisioned those same nail-scarred hands reaching out to me, I knew that the proof was there. In those holes, in that piercing, that I was loved beyond imagination. So students tonight, don't let it be unreconciled. Faith is not the absence of doubt. It's the way to get through it. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for tonight. We thank you for stories from the Bible of people like Thomas, people who are real, people who are relatable, people who interrupted Jesus to ask him questions because they didn't know, people who doubted, people like me. God, I thank you for all those years ago showing up for Thomas. I thank you for 22 years ago showing up for me. God, I thank you tonight if you need to show up for that one student. With your head bowed and your eyes closed, if that's been something you've been struggling with, the questions, how does this all work? Or maybe you've been wrestling with the doubts, and it's been a struggle. It's put some tension on your faith. Will you just raise your hand for me? I see you. Hey, students, that same reach you're doing now, we're going to sing here in a little bit. You can put your hands down, but when we get to this song, I want you to do that same reach. And I want you to pray, and I want you to ask God to reach back, because he will, if you just ask. And you know what? I'm going to ask your small group leaders to kind of go around the sides and the back. Small group leaders, you got that cue? When we worship through this song, if you feel him reaching back to you, and you want to go talk about what you're feeling with one of these leaders on the sides and the back, I want you to go find one of them, okay? These people want to love you. They want to talk about this with you. They want to help you unpack it. They want to help fortify your faith and let you know that just because you're doubting, just because you question, it doesn't mean that you're disqualified or discarded. It means you got to go through a process. For the rest of us who have worked our way through those questions and our doubts, we're going to sing and we're going to worship to our God tonight for meeting us in the same way he met Thomas. And we're going to pray for those around us who are trying to experience him. Can we do that? All right, Fuse, let's worship.